Exploring World Cultures and Mass Media. This week we continue our discussion of perception and how culture affects your perception of things like nonverbal communication and also of stereotypes. I wanted to point out something and connect last week with this week a little bit. Last week we talked about some communication models that we may use to begin talking about how humans communicate with each other. We talked about the SMCR model, that's the sender, message, channel, receiver model. And I mentioned that that's a model that comes from telecommunications. And it's a good way to start talking about different aspects of communication. But I wanted to point out something and provide a little scenario for you. Imagine if you were from another world and you traveled to this world and you were going to study human cultures and how humans communicate. And you're walking down the street and you see this symbol. Okay. Now, we all know what this symbol means. Really, depends on what part of the world you are from, how you interpret this symbol, but we all sort of know what it means based on our global cultural knowledge and our knowledge of the sign systems of the market culture and so on. But if you were from another world, you would have no basis for interpreting this, right? It doesn't contain its own meaning. And I use this example for talking about how symbols work. One of my areas of interest is visual communication. We talk a lot about how symbols work in visual communication and in visual artifacts. And it's a good example of how the SMCR model kind of breaks down. Symbols aren't just packages of meaning that are moving down a wire, so to speak. They don't contain their own meaning. You're bringing meaning to the symbols as you're interpreting them. Culture is actually in the decoding part of the model, right? When we decode, we bring the meaning to the symbol based on our own cultural competence, our own cultural knowledge, right? You bring meaning to the symbol. So think about that as you're going through some of the exercises for this week in the discussion of nonverbal communication and in your analysis of culture in the media, right? Perception is active. Human perception is not just a passive receptor of messages coming down a wire across some channel. We are actively perceiving our world and we make meaning in our heads, all right, and bring meaning to those symbols. Okay, so that complicates the notion of how human communication works, but it's fundamentally about symbolic communication. We are symbol makers, in other words. All right, so keep that in mind again as you're going through the exercises this week. Please reach out to me if you have any questions about the course content or about your assignments. I'm available all through the week by appointment. All right, so just reach out to me and we can do a Skype session or phone call. Whichever is convenient for you. All right, and I want you to have a very good week.